Hi, everybody. I'm hoping that you all saw that I posted the chapter that we're discussing for the next couple weeks. So even if you haven't been able to procure your textbook yet, you should be able to keep up with your reading assignments. Let's see, does everybody have their camera on? You should have 31 in all. And if everybody can be here with their camera on and on their face so I can like see your eyes so that I know if you're dying of boredom or if something's not making sense, that will help me be a better professor and keep things interesting. Okay, so we're still missing like 3 people. So what, well, I'm preaching to people who are already here, but when that happens, like it beeps while I'm trying to lecture and I'm not brilliant enough to lecture while people are still joining. So if you can be here right on time, that would be awesome. All right. So I talked to you guys about the self-evaluations on your own participation last time, right? So just a reminder that there's a link to those in Brightspace. So every Friday after class, and sometimes it's on a different day, it's like every 3 classes. I'd like you to go to that form and fill out how you think you did participating that week. Okay. Yeah, and so if you can keep the camera on you and not a wall or a door, that would be awesome. Just so I know I've got everyone here with me and we can keep participation as high as possible so that you don't have to listen to me all the time. And some people who have it like just right on your eyes, all I can see is your name, like your name is like blocking your eyes perfectly if the camera's pretty high on your forehead, like, let's see. Yeah, like Mackenzie, I can't see you because your name is over your face. I'm sorry. All right. What did I want to say? I don't think I mentioned last time that I do take attendance, but I use Zoom reports to do that. So I can get a report that says like when you logged in and how long you were on Zoom for. And that helps me not take way too long to take attendance in the beginning of class because we only have 50 minutes and we have a lot to cover and it takes me a really long time to take attendance. Also, I was talking about making chats anonymous last time and it turns out I can only do anonymous questions if we're in webinar mode, which doesn't work for a lot of reasons. That's a different mode than Zoom Classroom. But if you wanted to only text your question to me, no one else in the class will know who the question is from. So if you go to chat and do a private chat just to me, no one else will see who the question is from. The other thing is we talked about having maybe a chat monitor each time in case I don't see questions or statements people are making in the chat area. So is there somebody who's willing to do that today in case I miss a question or don't see?
I can do it. I can do it.
So that's Lily?
Lily.
Lily, okay, thank you. I'll write it down so I say your name correctly. Lily. Okay, all right, great. So today we're going to talk about, obviously, the integrative approach to psychopathology. And when we talk about psychopathology, that means pathology means disease, right? So it means disease of the mind. I don't really like all these. Well, first of all, these terms are very medical, right? And they're very negative, right? So not being neurotypical, not having any symptoms sounds like something that should have a stigma attached to it, which is not something I love. That's a problem with the name of the course, abnormal, right? And making it all medical is an issue too. The thing that's good about it is that some people, I mean, it's becoming less and less this way, is that some people are more comfortable getting help for medical issues than they are getting help for what they think of as psychological issues. And really, it's the same thing. When you think about it, pretty much every psychological issue that somebody has involves neurotransmitters, right? Involves different parts of the brain, involves genetics. So there's a medical element to everything, right? And this chapter talks a lot about integrating social things, psychological things, right? And biological things. And I've been trying to figure out why it's hard for me to give examples of those three things differently, separately. And it's because they're so inextricably intertwined that they shouldn't even really occur to you as separate things. You know what I mean? Like, and some people think, it allows people to make judgments. Oh, he or she or they have social reasons to behave this way. It's because of their environment, right? And then they feel somehow that that person's less to blame or something. And that's the person's not, we're not here to blame. We're here to understand and maybe help. So that's just kind of a preface I want to give to this discussion. But so I asked you to read, the first like 8 pages of this chapter and focus on, they only talk about equifinality a tiny bit, but equifinality, the diathesis stress model, and the reciprocal gene environment model. Right. So does somebody have any idea, feel like they have any idea what equifinality is? Enough to just say anything about it here in class? What does equifinality mean? There's like a very tiny part about it in the chapter. What do you think they mean by finality?
I might be able to put it in my own words.
Okay.
Um, it's saying that like for different disorders, there might be like different causes or various causes for how someone maybe gets that disorder or
Right.
something.
Right. So equifinality, equi kind of, finality could relate to final. Thanks, Rose. I forgot what Rosemary goes by.
Rosie. Thank you.
Yeah, so the same outcome, equal finality, and so the same end doesn't necessarily have the same pathway there, right? Like you might know 2 people who are moderately depressed or 5 people who are mildly anxious, and you probably do because you're college students and there's a ton of college students with anxiety disorders, and they didn't all get there the same way, right? Some of them clearly have parents and other close relatives who have anxiety disorders. Others don't, right? Others had stuff happen to them. Others had a combination of both. So there's all different pathways. And then others had developmental issues, right? So there are all these different things that interact to eventuate in either really great health or not either or, but parts of somebody that are super healthy, parts of somebody that involves symptoms, and it's not the same pathway for everyone, right? So that's what equifinality means. Just because the outcome is the same doesn't mean the pathway there is the same. Okay, so I'm going to share screen to show you the slide presentation, and I will post this slide presentation on Brightspace, and I can't put it in presentation mode because then when I move my little view of you guys around to see you better, I click through the slide presentation by mistake and lose my mind. Okay, so I can't make you guys bigger so I can see more of you. Hold on. And then I'm trying, if I make weird pauses and start clicking, it's because I'm trying to see people. Okay. Do I have everyone with me here? Kind of. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, I've already said what the integrated approach is. So clearly there is more than one thing contributing to anything psychological in someone's life, right? Even things that have a clear genetic cause, right? Like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. Those are two of the disorders that have the clearest, strongest genetic inheritance. But you don't have a 100% chance of having those disorders if your identical twin does. So there must be other things interacting, right? Neurotransmitters, emotions, learned behaviors, social factors, culture, developmental issues, right? There's a theory, I don't know how much, you know, meat is behind it, but that part of who develops schizophrenia has something to do with a series of viruses that they experience during the course of their youth, right? So that's an interaction between genes and early health, right? So there's not just one explanation. And you guys, this probably isn't news to any of you, right? Does this sound like, why are we even talking about this a little bit? Of course, there's more than one thing. It's never just because someone's mom's depressed that they're depressed too. But when I was going to college, we were forced to say whether we thought psychological problems were caused by nature or nurture. Was it genes or how people were raised? We had to say either or, and I remember saying both and getting kind of in trouble, like my professor saying, well, you're just taking the easy way out, because she didn't really I just didn't give a good enough real argument. I mean, I don't think she thought that that answer was horrible. I just think I had to have given my argument better. Anyway, so all that the integrative model is saying is that you have to integrate these different possible causes for things, and that you also have to take into account that it's not just additive. It's not always just, okay, he or she or they have a genetic component that's causing an issue, plus there's a social thing. So together that adds up to, no, some of these things are synergistic, right? Some of these things are like the perfect storm, right? And, you know, have you noticed that that quarantine is kind of the final element in a perfect storm for a lot of people? Do you know somebody who you think would have been okay had not the pandemic and quarantine kind of come down and just been the icing on the cake? Right? So, you know, obviously there's a ton of people who have some kind of vulnerability to something, right? Be it genetic, you know, cultural, whatever. Like think about, say, alcohol use disorder, right? huge cultural element to that, depending on what background you're from. Okay, like, so say Ukraine, that's where my boy's other side of the family is from. And when I was there, in my first marriage, we had like a marriage ceremony there after we got married in the US. And there was a bottle of vodka, like a real serious bottle of vodka for every 2 people at the table. I was like, am I expected to drink half a bottle of vodka this evening? Oh my God. So there's like a cultural kind of push there, like an encouragement, if you will. So maybe you have a cultural factor like that. And then say there's, some closely related relatives have alcohol dependence in your family, right? But you're somehow fine. Then the pandemic and quarantine happens, right? That's gonna enhance the likelihood, right? And so there's some kind of perfect storm, this alignment of planets that's not just 1 + 1 + 2. It's like one of them geometrically expands the impact of the others sometimes. And so an integrative model tries to take all that into account, right? And it tries to figure out how much is what, like, and which parts can we impact so we can take away the likelihood that person will have a problem, All right. So it's not just one thing, everything's interact, but they used to think it was one thing. Like in intro, you learned about behaviorism, right? You learned about humanism. You learned Freud's theory. Okay, they really, like, Freud thought it was all your unconscious. The behaviorists thought it was all what you learned, what you were, reinforced for, or what you had learned occurs together in life. And the humanists really thought you would just be okay as long as people gave you the bare minimum, as long as your, major needs were met. And they really thought their theory explained everything about people's psychological health or lack thereof. Now, I just think that's impossible, and like anybody who thinks something like that right now is considered a radical. So if somebody really feels that, they're called like a radical behaviorist, or not. Like, I haven't heard radical Freudian, but you might call somebody like an old school, true Freudian psychoanalyst. And that's considered, that's the periphery. Those are the marginal people now, right? Everybody thinks it's an integration now. Okay. All right. So genes and environment and a whole bunch of other things interact. And these are some of the models that people use to explain that. Frankly, I think some of these models are kind of oversimplified, but they're the ones that people use a lot, and you need to know them to be able to kind of understand the articles that you read, understand the chapters that you're reading in this class, stuff like that. So that's why I go through them. So we've talked about equifinality. I want to talk about the diathesis stress model. And this looks additive. It's not as additive. I was talking about how it's not just 1 + 1 = 2. The diathesis stress model is a little bit additive. That's why I think it's a little oversimplified. People use this a lot in the medical field. Hi, I'm teaching. What's up?
No, I just wanted to say
Oh, do you want to say hi to my class? This is my son, Matthew. You have to go in the. I have identical twins, so that you'll see a picture of them actually, I think later today. So I have another one. Daniel, who looks a lot like that.
Thing too.
Okay. See ya. Thanks for showing one.
No.
All right. Anyway, that's Matthew. Okay, so here in the diathesis stress model, it's the idea is that the diathesis is everybody with me? Like I can't see Mackenzie or Christopher or you guys passing out on me. Anybody else here? Anybody here? Okay. So the diathesis is the genetic thing, right? And the stress is the thing that's going on in your life. And together they might put somebody over the top to have a disorder, right? So can anybody think of someone they know who, I'm not asking you to diagnose your friends, but if you think somebody like actually has some symptoms that are, worthy of concern, have you kind of made a formulation, meaning have you thought about why? And part of it is the genes they were born with, and part of it is stuff that happened to them. Does anybody know somebody like that? So for example, do you have a friend who has anxiety, depression, a problem with alcohol, inability to stop vaping, anything like that, where you think they were kind of predisposed to it, vulnerable already, and then something happened? Emily?
So I think one of my friends has it. I think like anxiety kind of like runs in their family a little bit, but
Uh-huh.
when they like lost a family member, I think that is what really like escalated it, if that would
Okay.
be an example.
Okay. And so do you see kind of symptoms of anxiety in family members sometimes, or you hear about them
Yeah, a
through
little
your
bit.
friend? So
Mhm.
what are some of the things that the family does, or somebody, or even more than one person do that seems kind
I think, well, even just like one of my friends, like they tend to like worry about kind of everything that they're
of,
doing and don't really like ever doing things like by themselves, and they need like a lot of like reassurance and
okay. And then if you don't mind my asking, you don't have to give any identifying information, but like who died?
their grandmother.
Grandmother. Okay. And so the behavior kind of intensified after that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. So yeah, there's a ton of things that, I see there. And like actually there's disorders that usually occur in childhood, but they also occur in adulthood too. And one of them is separation anxiety disorder. And there's a genetic component, but also a lot of people um, really get first diagnosed after the loss of a loved one, right? Especially kids. And in kids, it can be a pet. It can be a pet in adults too, but it's pretty frequent. It's pretty common, and definitely, a loved one who's a human too. But in kids, very often it can be a fish. It can be, any kind of pet, and it can trigger separation anxiety disorder, whereby the kid's afraid to be apart from a parent because they start to fear that something terrible is going to happen to the parent while they're separated. So yeah, so there's, a genetic component presumably from the parents. Now, it's really hard to tease out. It could be that the parents gave them genes, right? Is there another explanation of why they would have the same kinds of anxiety that the parents do that anyone can think of, besides that they share many of the same genes?
It could be like how they're raised, like the environment they grow up in.
Yeah, anybody here taught to fear things? I taught my children to like deathly fear being in a car without seatbelts on. I'm like pulling at it when Matthew and Daniel were like 6 or something. I'm like pulling out of my garage at like 2 miles per hour. And they're like, we don't have our seatbelts on. And I'm like, you're not going to die. It was like just this side of a panic attack, So some of this stuff is learned too. So it's hard to tease out how much of it is that the family that they live with taught them that, and how much of it is that the family that they live with gave them the genes that make them think that way. Right. So, one way to see it is to look for those behaviors really early in life before they're taught. There's a whole bunch of ways to try to tease that out, right? Does anybody else have a friend or someone that they think had kind of a combination of things happen to them? Is anyone in chat? I can't see. Where the hell did chat go? Amanda?
I know my boyfriend, with the pandemic and then losing his grandpa, during the pandemic, it helped like bring back his depression that he has sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and it really affected him.
Right. So he already had it,
Mhm.
and there's big genetic components for depression, but there's also big like learned components of that. Like you have a much higher likelihood of having it if you have an identical twin with it. But so do fraternal twins. So it's like fraternal twins are twins that don't have the same exact genetic makeup. They're from 2 fertilized eggs instead of 1. So that kind of says that the shared environment has a lot to do with it as much as sharing genes, right? So he's already got the predisposition, he already has it, and then there's a stressor that promotes another, like a relapse, another episode, right? Okay. All right, cool. All right, so that's the diathesis stress model, and it's pretty easy to remember which is which because a stress is a stressor, right? And stressors can be things that are supposed to be good too. Can you think of something that's thought of as like a good thing? Yeah, I'm losing some of you. Like all I can see is the tops of some of your heads. So like, what are some good things or things that are thought of to be good? Sometimes they don't work out so great, but what are some things that are supposed to be good but are actually can be big stressors? Oh, there's a chat. Sorry. I don't know why I can't see chat. Could somebody tell me what the chat says?
I think it's only to you because it's not showing up for.
Sorry, excuse my language. Let me find where chat is. Like, so I click, oh, there it is. Oh, okay. I don't even know what that's related to because I can't. It was so long ago. Sorry. I'm sorry, that person. Okay, so people have their hands up. Okay, Bryant.
Would be like a clean freak be one?
Yes. Yeah. So it's supposed to be good to like have this perfectly clean house, but it could be a stressor, right? Because that can turn into like an expectation, right? But how about like a life event? How about something like that's a big, I think it probably happened to you, all of you in the past.
Graduation.
Graduation?
Because it's a change.
Right, it's supposed to be great, right? Wow, you graduated, congratulations, right? But then your whole life changes. And you often say goodbye to a whole bunch of people. Your whole life changes, right? I don't want to start anybody like crying or anything, but yeah. Anything else?
I know holidays, like they're usually like a good thing, but a lot of people get very stressed out on holidays.
Yeah, everybody's like, happy holidays, you know, and it can be the holidays. I remember my mom was a psychiatric nurse, and I remember her telling me that it was the busiest, most difficult time on the psychiatric unit, like just constant admits, because it's a really tough time of the year. It reminds people what they don't have. It reminds people everything that's gone wrong. It reminds people of all the losses of people that they've had. You know, it reminds people all the differences between their lives and like the Hallmark life that they see on TV, you know. All right, Brevin?
Final exams.
Final exam. Are they supposed to be good?
I mean, yes,
Yeah,
because you're
because you
cool,
like
but
summers after them, right? Or Christmas vacation,
yeah, for sure.
but they cause a ton of stress, right? What's a life event that you guys look forward to? I mean, not all of you, but some of you might have a big life event that you're hoping happens to you someday. Does
Oh, there's like a
Jamie? Huh?
oh, oh.
Huh?
I was gonna say, like, in response to your last question, like moving, like
Moving.
away.
Yeah. All right. So say you win the lottery, right? And you move to a huge mansion. Sounds good, right? Is it always? That's a massive transition. Jamie, did you have your hand up or was I?
Yeah, I was just gonna say like kind of like moving out and like getting married and like making a family and stuff.
Yeah. So getting married is supposed to be fabulous, right? Anybody know somebody? I mean, even without quarantine, without the whole pandemic thing, is it smooth sailing and like a fairy tale? Rosie?
I was gonna say, like, even with the pandemic, like I have older sisters, and like my oldest sister is like 30, and she has like the constant questions of like, when are you gonna get married? When are you gonna like have children? All of that. And I think with the pandemic, it makes it even like harder for her, and she's kind of just like over everyone asking her when she's gonna get married.
Yeah, I mean, it's oh yeah, trying to find somebody during pandemic is, you know, but in terms of a life event, like something that happens in your life that's supposed to be happy and isn't necessarily stress free, getting married would be one of them, right? Or even meeting somebody that you fall head over heels in love with, right? Because what happens? You stop seeing your friends, you stop going to class, you blow off work, right? And your life kind of goes to shambles sometimes, right? So there's all kinds of positive life events. Amanda, did we already talk about the one you were in?
I said like a new job or a promotion.
Oh yeah, definitely. The promotion, like you're so proud, right? But with it comes a lot of responsibility, right? Yeah, and people who were like your close friends, now you're telling them what to do. You know, people who you were close to might think they got passed over. You know, sorry, I can find like the cloud to any silver lining. um, and then the other one is having children. So like having a baby, people look forward to, you know, when it's, you know, planned and people want it and everything. It's like people await it with bated breath and they're so excited and it's a wonderful thing. And then there's sleepless nights and stress about a baby's illness and things like that. So there are a lot of things that are supposed to be people think of as just joyous that are also very stressful life events, right? All right, so the other model, which is also a little bit simplified, is that I want to talk about is the reciprocal gene environment model. So without like, I don't really love the graphic for that one, but does somebody feel like they kind of understand that one from what they've read? How's that one different from just like the diathesis stress one? Lily?
Isn't it like your genetics kind of determine if you're gonna like the likelihood of you experiencing a certain situation more than others?
Right. Like people pick certain environments that are more likely to lead to certain outcomes based on their genes, right? So can anyone think of an example of this? What was the example they gave in the book?
It was divorces, and like how if like your mom and dad got divorced, you're more likely to get divorced, or like if you're like a twin and they got divorced, you have a higher chance of getting divorced as well.
Right, right. So what does that say about what kind of environment people pick impacting outcomes for them? Anyone? Like, why would a gene? So apparently you've inherited a gene from your parents that make you pick things a certain way so that you're more likely to have your marriage end in divorce. How would that be? Can you think of why that would happen? Okay, I can't see Andrew, Christopher, Brevin. Can't see you guys. Need to see your faces. Okay, so, okay, Ryan?
Like your genes could make you tend to pick somebody that you're more incompatible with, so that the marriage ends up not working out.
Yes. Yeah, so some people, there are really some really cruel ways that people have applied this information, but yeah, I like yours is like the least victim blaming one, because most people who get divorced really took their vows seriously and truly thought they were in love with their partner and would be forever. But like sometimes this is explained as, oh, you inherited a gene that makes you not take marriage vows seriously. And some people say, oh, you've inherited a gene that makes it impossible to live with you, and stuff like that. But what it really, the true explanation is really that the gene that you've inherited has perhaps made you more likely to choose somebody that you're less compatible with, someone who is less likely to compromise. Also, you could inherit genes that are kind of low self-concept related. Like if you've inherited, genes that are more likely to make you depressed, those can be related to having a low self-image and kind of choosing partners based on who finds you tolerable, the first person to find you, okay, instead of who you really like, right? And that obviously could lead to divorce, right? So submissive people might choose somebody overly dominant. This was also the thing that really was tough about this particular theory is that people would use it to explain why certain people ended up in abusive relationships over and over again. And one explanation was the reciprocal gene environment model. And it said that victims of abuse were attracted, had a genetic vulnerability to be attracted to people who were dominant, controlling, and violent. So there's just like, what's the issue? Why is that a disturbing explanation? Why would anyone have a problem with that explanation?
It's basically just like blaming the victim for their
Yeah.
poor
Yeah, it's kind of
I mean,
saying, you got yourself into this, and while you can counsel people to choose someone different, or to see the signs and the red flags and stuff, it might not be super helpful to explain it that way. Christopher, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, also kind of just making them feel like they're in a hopeless situation, like there's no room to change or correct it or anything like that. Like they're
Yeah,
just what they're destined to be.
yeah, that's often the issue with any kind of genetic explanation, right? It's in my genes. What am I going to do? There's one woman who she adopted someone and he ended up killing someone when he was a young adult. And she tried to get him off based on the fact that when she did a thorough review of his genetic history, there were several people in his biological family who were homicidal and who had killed people. So she was almost arguing that he didn't have a choice, that he was, predestined to murder people in his life because of his genetic background. That didn't really fly. He's not walking the streets today. But yeah, some people can take it that way. Luckily, there's epigenetics. Can somebody tell me what epigenetics are? So even if you have a gene for something, there are still, I don't think it was in your reading, but you might just know it. Are genes necessarily destiny? Like say you have, I think we did, I know that the Caspian silk. Yeah, Christopher again?
This is from memory, but isn't that like the dominant and recessive genes?
Yeah, well, it has to do with that. Like, yeah, you could inherit genes from your parents that don't play out in your phenotype. That's true. Yasmin?
I think it's saying that like if you have the genetic predisposition, like your environment can determine whether like that gene is expressed or not.
Right. Yeah, like whether it gets, so you can have the gene like for lung cancer, but not get lung cancer, right? Because not all identical twins, if one has lung cancer, the other one doesn't necessarily have it. Like the administrative assistant for psychology who just retired, she has brothers who are identical twins, and one had lung cancer and one didn't. One of them smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day and the other one didn't, right? So they both had a gene that made them vulnerable to lung cancer, but because of their environment, one of them got it and one of them didn't. So some genes turn on and some genes turn off, and how you live in the environment you're in can impact that. Now, I also have a good friend who is an identical twin. She's a few years older than me, and her identical twin died of lung cancer at like 30 something, and she never smoked. And they grew up in the same household. So at some point in their lives, her identical twin was exposed to something that she wasn't, but she doesn't know what it was. And it could have been stress. Stress, even in the absence of a toxin, can turn on and off certain genes, right? But in terms of choosing certain environments that would make you more or less likely to have a disorder, can you think of an environment that you could choose that might make you more or less likely to do something or have a disorder?
Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so the reciprocal gene environment model says that people have genes that make them pick environments that they might be more likely to have a psychological problem in. Can you think of an environment people might pick that would make them more likely to have a psychological disorder?
Feel like they would pick an environment that they feel most comfortable in, but not necessarily is like healthy or like the right environment they should be in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Like,
Yeah.
mhm.
Or maybe like a work environment, like they're ambitious, but at the same time, like it's not the healthiest thing to be able to like constantly working, and it could cause like something
Right. Like, think
detrimental to
about,
their mental health.
right. So I'll give you a couple examples. Say an eating disorder, say anorexia nervosa. What are some lines of work or, paths that somebody could pursue that might make their vulnerability to that disorder eventuate in actually having that disorder?
Modeling.
Modeling, yeah.
Acting.
Acting. Amanda?
Maybe like the dance world, like ballerinas.
Yeah, definitely ballet, dance. Less so lately, thank God. There's definitely more like variation, kind of. Believe it or not, it probably doesn't feel that way to you guys. And then, I was really surprised to hear that jockeys, a lot of, well, they don't, it's more bulimia than anorexia, but that's a male, predominantly male profession that tends to lead to eating disorders because they have, a huge pressure to maintain a low weight. I have a nephew, my sister's stepson is like a mixed martial arts, like extreme. He's like a cage fighter, and he like tells me how he loses like 60 pounds in a week or something. And I'm like, that's great. That's great. It's like all the same exact like behaviors that all the eating disorders clients I've heard about, engage in, except he doesn't have like the extreme dissatisfaction with his body type and the overwhelming desire to be thin. He doesn't have the underlying illness that's I'll never be thin enough underneath it. That's what distinguishes him, but the behaviors are disturbing. Yeah, some of them. But if you had a tendency to have an eating disorder and you had struggled with one in the past, it might not be the best career for you to be a cage fighter. Christopher?
Oh, can also be culturally too, because I know some cultures like the like fat is beautiful, like they want the woman to be like really, really thin.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, they've done studies on that, and they have like, if you look up certain articles, they have like different silhouettes for men and women, based on what the cultural ideal is. Like the one for Italy is one of the thinnest. I was kind of surprised by that. And actually, sorry, we have, oh wait, how much time do we have? None. So my parting words will be that anorexia, there's a country in Africa that anorexia never showed up in because the ideal was a tiny bit overweight until they got cable, and an 80s nighttime soap opera called Dynasty became very popular. And that's when anorexia showed up for the first time in that culture. So yeah, good point, Christopher. All right, we'll stop there. I'll see you guys on Friday. Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Do you have a quiz?
There's not a quiz until the following Friday.
Oh, okay. I might have read the syllabus from my fault.
Okay, thanks.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Excuse me, Professor.
Yes.
I am currently not gonna be here on class Friday because I'm coming up to school. Like I'll be
Okay.
traveling from out of region like
Okay.
throughout the day on Friday. So I mean it might be a possibility I get back around like to like Worcester probably like 1:30 or something, but I'm not exactly sure like the time.
All
So
right. Well, you have 3, excused absences for any reason before it impacts your grade in any way.
okay, I just wanted to let you know and
Yeah,
stuff like
thank
that.
you.
Yeah, I
All right.
appreciate it. I hope you have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
All right.